Is Dorian Riley, and I talk about pretty much all things domestic violence. And I go through the A to Z journey, which discusses a lot about my own experiences and other experiences that I have known of other people to have. So I just want to share that information with you in hopes that you'll share with someone else so we can decrease the number of people that's going through domestic violence. Okay, so that is my wish, that is my hope, that is my prayer for this channel. So thanks to everyone who has shared these videos and who has watched these videos and who has liked the videos and subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you so much. And we need a team of people. We need a village. We need the entire world to help us in this quest to decrease the domestic violence all over the world. So thank you. I appreciate you. Today, the letter I'll be going over is H. And so when I think of the letter H in my domestic violence journey, I think about how helpless I felt. I mean, just completely and utterly helpless. It just felt like I couldn't do anything to help myself, you know. And when you're in a relationship like that, you kind of wonder if it's ever going to end. You kind of wonder if it's ever going to get better. But like I said in so many of my other videos, that it does not get better. I know from experience that it gets worse. And I know other people that have went through domestic violence, and they can also tell you that it does not get better. It only gets worse, especially when we try to hide it from other people, because the less people that knows, the easier it is for us to stay in it longer. Because a lot of times when we feel like people know, sometimes that prompts us to make a decision, you know, to go ahead and leave that situation. But like I said, everybody's situation is different. My hope and prayer for you is to get out of that situation and don't stay, you know, a second longer, because you never know how it might end. You know, you just never know. You don't want to put yourself in that situation to where you're waiting to see, you know. So definitely, you just feel helpless, you know. You're, for the most part, relying on that person, you know, your abuser, to pretty much think for you, to act for you, to, you know, tell you what to do and what not to do, you know. And it's really hard to think of it that way, that you are relying on another person's thoughts, even though you have your own. But in a domestic violence situation, you lose a lot of those things. You lose a lot of yourself, you know. So it could be just a simple, it could be a simple decision. And sometimes it feels like you can't make it, or you're too scared to make it. You know, you're too fearful, you know, wondering, is that person going to agree with you or not? And if they don't, what's going to happen if they don't agree with you? So that is something, definitely, like I always talk about red flags. If someone is making you feel that you can never make the right decision, making you feel like you're stupid, that you can't think for yourself, and just making you feel bad about yourself. You know, sometimes it's not something we can necessarily put in words, but if you're the one feeling that way, then you know when you're not feeling good about yourself. You know when you're around someone, when you're in their presence, if you're feeling worse about yourself and not better, if they're down in you, then those are all red flags that it's pretty much a domestic violence relationship. Like I said, they're not all physical, you know, but emotional pain, psychological pain can hurt just as bad, if not worse, because it can linger. It can linger. Even though I am a survivor now, I can still remember, you know, how that felt, you know, to be in that relationship, you know, that just psychological abuse, you know, emotional abuse. You know, that is not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling to be with a partner, around a person that's just constantly putting you down, making you feel like I said, you can't do anything right, but yet they still want to be around you, which is the, you know, just puzzling part. It just makes no sense. Basically, all they want is somebody to control, and if you're it, then they're gonna continue in that relationship most of the time until you leave it. There has been some cases what I've heard about the abusers leaving the victim, but usually that is not the case. Usually it's the victim that needs to leave them, because some people will not allow, you know, people to abuse them. Thank God, you know, it's people that will not stand for that. So abusers know pretty much, a lot of times they know who that person is. They know what type of person that is. And sometimes it's not always that way. So I am not saying that you were an easy target for that reason. They just looked at you and knew that they could abuse you. Sometimes that is the case. Don't get me wrong. So there was a lot of healing I had to do, a lot of learning I had to do about myself, like self-care, not neglecting myself or anybody. That's very important. So if you feel like you are in a situation to where it's just bringing you down, you feel helpless, you feel hopeless, that's not a good situation. It is not. And you have to really think about, is that a good place for you to be in? I mean, it sounds like it's not. Sometimes people will just accept any relationship over no relationship at all. Well, I am here to tell you that you definitely do not want to do that. So if it means being single, which is something you might need to do anyway, it does not hurt you. It helps you to learn about yourself more. So it's not a bad thing at all, especially when you're comparing it to a domestic violence situation. Like, do you want to be single or in a domestic violence relationship? I would pick single every day. I mean, there's no way that people usually willingly choose that. Like I said, it usually ease into that situation. Domestic violence doesn't always just start right off the bat. Like I said, it can start off very slowly. Usually it does. It slowly pulls you in. Before you know it, you are head first deeply in a domestic violence relationship. So there are those relationships that I've heard about that people get in and right away the person is being abusive or talking down to them or whatever. So if that's the case, you definitely want to run for the exit right away, because it's easier to leave when you're first meeting somebody. It's so much easier. It's so much easier. Because at that point you have nothing invested, pretty much, unless you're someone that falls in love easy, and that is the case for some people. So I don't want to say anything negative about that, because I think that's a beautiful thing. I think real love is a beautiful thing. However, you have to make sure you are still paying attention to your own emotions, to see how you feel in that relationship. See how you feel being around that person. Sometimes that is what tells you if you're in the right situation or not. However, after leaving a domestic violence relationship, sometimes you are confused about who's a good person, who's not a good person, if you're in a good situation. If you're not in a good situation, like I said, that's self-care. That is a must-have. You must do that for yourself to hopefully not enter into another relationship like the one you're leaving, or your loved one is leaving, or the one your loved one needs to leave, or the one that you need to leave. Okay? Because if you haven't did enough healing on yourself and enough work on yourself, it's very easy to repeat those patterns and get back into a relationship like you don't want to be in, like none of us want you to be in. So you have so much to give to the world, so much of a contribution, so much. You don't want to lose yourself in this type of relationship, in a domestic violence relationship. It is not good whatsoever. Like I said, even after you leave, sometimes you still feel some of those feelings that you felt when you was in that horrible relationship, which makes it hard to trust, a new relationship, The only good thing about it is it helps you to pinpoint when you're not feeling right about a situation. Sometimes we overthink it, sometimes that is the case, but I would rather overthink it than underthink it. You need to really pay attention to, like I said, how you feel when you're around that other person. Does it feel like the last relationship you were in that domestic violence relationship? If that is the case, then you need to say something right away. That need to be a discussion that you and your partner have to figure out what's going on. And if you continue to feel that way, then I would suggest starting to make your exit. You'd rather be safe than sorry. I would totally say that. Because your very life is on the line, or could be on the line. So is it worth it? You have to think about that. You have to ask yourself that. So throughout this video, I will be putting the domestic violence hotline number on there. So definitely use it, because the safety plan to exit a situation like that is very important. You have to really make sure you are staying as safe as possible when you're leaving a situation like that, because we all know the dangers that can happen from leaving a domestic violence situation. Okay, you definitely need to. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying try to find the safest way to do that. All right, so please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, definitely, so you do not miss any of these videos. If there are any comments or anything that anyone want me to discuss, definitely put that in the comments. I will be checking those out and I will be responding to those. So definitely subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Have a blessed day.